Then you have the results section. The purpose of the results section is to clearly describe the results of your study using statistical analysis. So here's where you're going to have a basic understanding of statistics. This is partly why we encourage you to take SAT 250 before taking this class, because now you want to write your results, but also include the statistics. So if you understand statistics, you'll know what R100 equals 0.50, comma P equals 0.01. You know what that means. It means that R is that you have a correlation. The 100 means that you had 102 participants. The 0.5 is the actual correlation itself. And the P equals 0.01 is telling you that the probability of you getting a correlation of 0.5 is equal to 1%. Right? So it's important that you have a basic understanding of statistics so that you can read result sections to understand the statistics that were being used. And then we have our discussion section. This is where you want to draw conclusions based upon your findings. So there are 4 things I want you to remember to do in your discussion section. And oftentimes students forget to do all 4 and they lose points on their papers. So first thing you want to do is restate your key results without using statistics. And this is also a shortcut that if you don't understand the statistics, you can always skip to the discussion section and see if you can make sense of the results because you're not going to incorporate the statistics there. So that might be one way for you to kind of make sense of statistics if you don't fully understand in the results section. So you want to restate the results without statistics. Then you want to talk about the implications of your work. Like, why is this important? How does this help us understand the research question that you introduced in the beginning of the paper? Then you want to highlight any limitations, and every study has limitations. And if you're unclear about the limitations, you can always go back to, well, what are the limitations of that particular research method, right? So if it's a correlational study, one limitation that you can't make any causal claims, right? So if you're unclear about the limitations, you can at least think about what are the limitations of the methodology that was used, and you can talk about that as one of your limitations. And then you want to talk about future direction. So you want to tell the reader about, some next steps in terms of the research process that they can explore. So given what we found, here's an interesting question that future research should try to explore. All right, so I said I would come back to the abstract, so let me do that now. So the purpose of the abstract is to provide a concise summary of your paper. And depending on the journal, the word limit can range from 120 to 150 words. And you'd be surprised at how quickly you run out of words in your abstract. The abstract always comes right after the title page, and it's on its own page, and the heading's called abstract. And again, the goal here is for the abstract to allow the reader to quickly make sense of your article. Oftentimes, when people do lit searches, they'll read the abstract to see if they want to actually read the whole article. So the more compelling your abstract is, and the more compelling your title is, that might be the difference between people reading your article and not reading your article. So spending time making sure that your abstract is clear is going to pay dividends down the road. So I talk about the abstract at the end because I feel like as though you can use some of the information that you report in the other parts of the paper in your abstract. So for example, part of the abstract, you're going to want to state what the problem is, right? So you can pull that from the intro of your paper. You want to give the reader a sense of what the major hypotheses were. Again, that can come from the intro. If you give information about the sample, you can get that from the method section. If you provide information about the design, again, that can come from the method section. And you're always going to want to state your key results that you can pull from your results section. And then you want to state any major conclusions or implications, you can pull that from your discussion section. So if you've written the whole paper, then you can pull pieces from that paper to help develop the abstract. So I always recommend writing the abstract at the very, very end. Now let's talk about the reference section. The purpose of the reference section is to provide the reader with a list of all of your sources in alphabetical order. So this way, the reader can find the sources that you're citing and be able to look them up if they want more information. So everything that you cite in your paper must be listed in the reference section. So if you cite it in the paper, it must be listed in the reference section. And each reference must be presented in a very specific order. And the order of which you present these references will make it easier for the reader to find certain pieces of information. So let's talk about each of these pieces of information in the order in which it needs to be presented. So I'm going to give you a running example of one as I go through this. So the first thing you want to report is the last name of the first author, and then their first name, their middle name, and then an ampersand before the last author. So if there's two authors, the last name of the first author, their initials, comma, ampersand, last name of the second author, and initials. Just remember the ampersand comes before the last author. The reason that the order is important is because the first author is the person who has contributed the most. So you want to make sure that that person gets their name listed first. So the ordering is important. It's not based upon the last name of the author in terms of alphabetical order. It's based upon contribution. So always take into account that the first author is the one who contributed the most. So for our example here, we have Lowry, and then BS for his first and middle name, comma, ampersand, Wout, and then my first initial and middle initial. Next, you want to report the year of publication in parentheses followed by a period. So this particular article was published in 2010. So as you can see on our running example here at the bottom, now we add in our year of publication. Then you want to give the title of the actual article, right? And the important thing to remember is that only the first letter of the first word is capitalized, and then the first letter of any word after a colon or semicolon that gets capitalized. Everything else is lowercase. And then you follow that title with a period. So for our running example here, we now have included the title followed by a period. Then you want to report the title of the journal. Now, in contrast to the title of the article, the major words in the title of the journal should be capitalized. So for here, you can see the J in journal is capitalized, the P in personality, the S in social, the P in psychology, those are all capitalized. And importantly, the title of the journal should be in italics. So there's two things that are going to be in italics. This is the first of them, the title of the journal. So if you're looking at a running example here, we've now included the title of the journal in italics. And then next you have the volume number. And this is the other piece of information that needs to be in italics. So you report the volume number followed by a comma. So our running example here, we've now included 98 for our volume number followed by a comma. And then you report the page numbers followed by a period. So this was 956 to 966. And then if it's available to you, you should also report the DOI, which is the Digital Object Identifier. This is just a way in which it makes it easier for people to get an article from the internet. If they click that DOI number, it should take them directly to the article. So if the DOI number is available, you should also give that to the reader. And the D, O, and the I are all lowercase, and then followed by a colon, and then the actual DOI number. So for example here, we've included our DOI number at the end. One thing to remember about your reference section is that each reference needs to have a hanging indent. So the first line is going to be flush left, and each subsequent line is going to be indented. 5 spaces. So just make sure that you have hanging indents for each of your references. Now, it might be tricky at times to be able to find all the information that you need to report. So I'm going to show you where to find most of this information. It will vary a little bit between journals, but almost all the journals are going to have the key information on the very first page of the article. So this is the published version of this article. So I'll help you find the information that you need to report. So first you need to report the authors, right? So the authors always go from top left to top right, and then bottom left to bottom right. So the first author here is going to be Lowry. Second author here would be Wout. If there was a third author, it would be below Lowry. And if there's a fourth author, it would be below Wout. So it just basically goes top left down to bottom right. So that's how you know the order. So you put Lowry, then his initials, Wout, my initials. The year is 2010, so that's reported up here. The title, obviously you can see that here. Again, the key is to remember that while the title, most of the words begin with an uppercase letter in the title in the actual journal, in the reference section, only the first word or any word after a colon are going to be in capitalized. So you can't just cut and paste this. You're going to end up doing it incorrectly. You're going to have to adjust it from the actual title in the journal to your reference section. It's not going to be the exact same thing. The journal here, again, remember that journal needs to be italicized. The volume number also has to be italicized. You do not need to include VOL, just the number itself in italics. The page number, and then you have the DOI number. And that's it.